This is a brief video summary of the article Word Segmentation, the Role of Distributional Cues. This is the seminal work in transitional probability and was written by Saffran, Newport, and Aslin in 1996 and published in the Journal of Memory and Language. The research question is simple. Do distributional cues in speech input give learners enough information to figure out where word boundaries are? Distributional cues here refers to the statistical properties of the language input, and transitional probabilities are specifically the chances that a syllable will follow another syllable in this language. Now, they did several experiments. I'm just going to discuss the first one here. To test the hypothesis, they created an artificial language and used a computer to synthesize speech in this language. That allowed them to control for things like syllable length, syllable spacing, prosody, and other cues that might give people additional information about where the word boundaries are. This allowed them to make sure that the only information-bearing element in the speech input consisted of the transitional probabilities alone. The participant pool consisted of 24 University of Rochester undergraduates who were monolingual English speakers. The language itself was formed by creating 12 syllables by combining 4 consonants and 3 vowels to form CV pairs, such as ba, bi, bu. They created 6 words by combining 3 of these syllables to form words such as ba, bu, pu. They then took an equal number of these words and combined them to form 21 minutes of language input data. That language input was split into 3 7-minute segments and were presented as listening blocks for participants. After the 3 listening blocks, participants were given 2 different test blocks depending on which condition they were in. All of the test blocks use a forced choice paradigm. That is to say, you were forced to choose between 2 elements. The elements consisted of either a word and a non-word, or a word and a part word. Non-words consisted of patterns that were not found in the speech input at all. Part words consisted of words that occurred in the language with one of the syllables replaced. For instance, ba, bu, pu may have become ba, bu, tu. In both conditions, participants were able to successfully distinguish between words that occurred in the language and words that did not. This is really interesting. For one, the amount of speech input was very low. For another, the fact that they were able to do it even with part words is really cool, and there's some differential performance on types of part words that's really interesting and ties to my research. Part words that consisted of similar onsets to existing words were really easy for people to distinguish. They did a really good job at telling which ones were words and which ones weren't. Part words that consisted of the ends of existing words were hard to tell apart. And that sort of differential learning is something that I predict and test in my own research.